Hello and welcome back, everybody, to this second game of the EU SCC. Now, you might be thinking, were you just chair two? Yes, I was, but now I've slotted on over. Bit of musical chairs, as I am now the chair one, joined now by Kaizo. So, Kaizo, welcome on in. Today, we have just seen the Solar Scarabs take a 2-0 victory, and now we're going to see the Bolts and the Niflheim Wargs come up against each other and see who can come out on top. Now, plenty of change to be had, but we are, of course, now playing on the 10.10 patch. Have you seen much in this current patch that really intrigues you?
It's a lot of the Ares that I'm very interested in, because Ares was one that even before the changes that he saw was very prominent in the meta. I think that a lot of teams were high priority pick or ban for that character, and now that he actually has those damage mitigations in the ultimate and also has the same utility that he's been working with for a long time, I think that's a very interesting change to look forward to, as well as some of the old stuff that we've kind of been getting used to and getting accustomed to at this point. In particular, things like the Emoja, things like the Olorun, the Camazotz, and now Baba Yaga is back into the mix. She was out for a short period of time due to some interesting interactions, we'll say, with some of the items that she had available to her, but now that those are no longer the case and she's available for play again, she's pretty comfortable right back in the same spot where she was, in a very solid spot in the meta for the mid lane. So a couple of new things to look at, but a lot of the same as well.
Let's look up for what new things we might find as we head on in to Game 1 picks and bans. And we have just seen in our previous set, we did see a bit of Baba Yaga come on through. Not too much in the way of assassins in the mid lane, actually, which has been quite popular in the NASCC, and maybe something we might expect to come through now. But I actually mentioned this to Alpha Jackal last night, but I'm going to throw it to you now, Kaizo, because we might be seeing some of it. What do you think it is about this assassin in the mid lane that has been so popular lately?
I think it's just how vulnerable the mid laners are in particular, and how important that neutral farm is to actually get for yourselves in the mid lane. If you can get a clamp, if you can get a lockdown on those mid camps, if you can force all that farm into tower, deny some of that gold, that's always going to be very beneficial for you. And mages are in a bit of a weird spot, where the ones that you would traditionally want to play, things like the Baba Yaga, we've seen a lot of Morgan Le Fay as well, characters that want to get a couple of items online, just get easily pressured out by these high pressure assassin melee kind of characters that really you just don't want to get anywhere near. And that's kind of the whole theme for putting them in the mid lane as well. You literally cannot get away from them if you want to get toward the farm. So it at least pressures you out, it forces you to play a little bit differently, and honestly just makes them more uncomfortable, because these mid laners want to just sit back, sit behind the entirety of their front line, and maybe hold hands with another backliner and just toss damage from a very long way away, Judas. And if you've got not only 2 but now 3 different characters diving you, that makes your life a whole lot more difficult. So I think that the assassin mid it's definitely a farm-oriented idea, kind of denying some of that gold, denying some of that XP, but it also just shifts very comfortably into making sure that the enemy team doesn't get to play the game how they want to.
Oh, we do see the Olorun coming through, top pick for the Niflheim Wargs. This one magical ADC slipping through, because there's a bit of attention actually paid to this Zhong Kui being first banned away from the Niflheim Wargs. Now, we have seen a little bit of Zhong Kui already today, but Raijin, the big notable one I want to pull out there, because actually Duduin piloted this in the solo lane for the Olympus Bolts last weekend, and that was the game they were able to win. But see lots of priority onto Ganesha so far as well, and Ganesha, really, really high importance. God is here. But how does Ganesha stand up to an Olorun at the moment? Like, is that the type of God you're looking at to counter this Olorun, or are you maybe going to pick that up later?
The Ganesha isn't necessarily what you would consider to be a counter to Olorun. It doesn't have the worst matchup into him whatsoever. I mean, you can... The basis of the matchup is Olorun wants to use his ultimate, move freely around in it, use that time dilation field to his advantage, and get as much value as possible out of it. And then Ganesha puts him in a box, says, if you leave here, then things are going to get a whole lot more difficult for you. And then kind of just hopes that that's enough to keep him contained. So it definitely impedes his his ability to do what he wants to, but doesn't necessarily counter it in the same way that a Vomit ult might do, a Guan Yu ult, a Camazotz ult, all of these tools that are very good at diving. Notably, the Camazotz is a very top contested pick and is available for the Bolts if they want to try to grab it. Hades, another one that people typically look at to at least put some pressure on the Olorun, but instead going for this Heimdallr, which is, I mean, we saw E-Chrome play it to some pretty good effect in the previous set. I don't know that I would necessarily color it as a top ADC pick right now. I think that it's definitely, you can call it flavor, you can call it preference. It's not the #1 pick by any stretch of the imagination, but it still always does the exact same thing Heimdallr has always done. It's incredibly safe, it's very good at eliminating a frontliner from a fight, and it can also play pretty aggressively in lane against an Olorun that traditionally doesn't have a whole lot of difficulty in that laning phase. So, not the worst idea in the world, but definitely left a couple of counters up on the table. And honestly, Judas, still leaving them there if the Bolts decide to grab it.
Of course, you got to leave them there if you really find you need to ban out an Outwash. Now, not that that is a troll ban by any means. We have actually seen a bit of Outwash, and of course, with Duduin picking up a mage solo previously, it's not out of the realms of possibility. But interestingly, we actually saw Ganesh Heimdallr as a dual lane in the previous game for the Tartarus Titans, and it felt like in that game that it just gave too much space to the opposing ADC. And we really need to see now a jungler come out for the Olympus Bolts that can put out some pressure in lane, whether that's by virtue of CC or whether that will just be from outright damage. That might be the way forward. But Camazotz and Set, if those are locked in, that is a brutal push down on that's that sort of assassin mid double dive we were talking about. And yeah, looks like that's what the Wargs are going for.
And that's some spooky stuff right there, Judas. These are some of the utmost assassins that we have in the meta right now. If you watch any of the interviews with the pro players where they name what they consider to be the top picks right now, generally, I think Set will be in that conversation. This character is very good in the mid lane, also pretty good in the jungle. I think that we're more than likely going to be seeing Hawk piloting this one in the mid. But honestly, with the way things are shaking up and how everything's getting all topsy-turvy with where these assassins go, even if it is Camazotz mid, that's still not the worst pick in the world. I think Pele was also in this conversation as well, not picked or banned in this one, as Bolts are going to round us out here with the Susano. And the Bolts are going to have to play some kind of turtle-based defense here, Judas, because they are against some of the craziest dive you can really pick in Smite right now. Set wants to go in, be the MVP of the team fight, be the main character of the team fight, and then that's kind of distracting you from the fact that this Camazotz is also going to be doing very relevant damage, very difficult to deal with. Once he gets into that ultimate, if he blinks on this Agni, it's gonna be trouble. Somebody's gonna have to keep this Agni safe, keep this Heimdallr safe, and it's gonna be a tall task for Dutsher and the rest of the boys.
Well, we have seen the draft come through. We will have to see how this game will go, but we're going to wait. We're going to make sure we are totally set and ready to bring you this game. We're going to throw it to a quick break. When we come back, we'll be bringing you game number 1. All right, everybody, thank you for your patience. We are just about ready to head on into the Niflheim Wargs versus the Olympus Bolts. So let's not waste any time. Let's get on in to this first game. And as we mentioned previously, we've got pretty standard picks across the board. However, this will be a set mid for the Niflheim Wargs. GunTTeRR going to be piloting that one. Other than that, pretty much standard. And I guess you could call the set in mid pretty much a standard pick these days.
It's getting to that point, man, and it's definitely weird for those of you who haven't been watching SPL very recently, or maybe you're a little bit new to the competitive scene in general. But this isn't a cheese pick, which I've seen some people call it in the past. This is very much a developing force in the meta, is these assassin mids. There's so much flexibility in what the mid is able to do because it is very prominently positioned in the middle of the map, Judas. That means that you can use it to rotate, you can use it to farm very safely because the lane is pretty much the shortest that you'll get, which is basically the safest that you can get because the tower is always going to be very close to you, and it's where all of the farm is at as well. You can see those mid camps due to spawn in just a couple of different seconds. You've got the oracles that will be there, which are very prominent and very important later on. It's a very flexible role, man, and you're going to have to get used to seeing very diverse god pool from these characters from these players who the god pool is pretty darn deep at this point.
Yeah, you have to really dig deep and make sure you're well versed in these choices. Now, Dutsher taking a ton of poking coming on out. Dutsher actually really, really low. Can Davey find the shot? Load with fantastic blocking. Get down, Mr. President Dutsher. Fantastic play there. Just about saving the life of the Ganesh.
We just saw Emilito playing support. Put Lode on support, man. That was some great body blocking there from the Heimdallr to keep his Ganesh alive. And Dutch are actually going to stick around and make sure that they can pressure out this shield buff. And this divide, Judas, that we're seeing right now with OtherTheAnother in left lane and then Rapio in right lane is pretty commonplace, where you'll see one jungler go grab that shield buff, make sure that that goes in favor of his dual lane, and the other jungler, instead of contesting, instead of making that a 3v3 and having 6 people on the map fight at that stage of the game, will instead shift over to the right lane, grab the cooldown buff, and put his solo laner ahead. It is worth noting that typically if you get your decision for which one you're going to go for example, if you have what we call priority in the middle lane, you get the wave cleared first, you can shove the wave into tower. Most teams will elect to go for the dual lane start, where they get their ADC ahead, grabbing that shield buff. You do have the option to play around your solo laner and grab that cooldown buff instead, but typically teams prefer to favor the shield buff and getting their ADC ahead, in particular when you're playing something that has just loads of pressure like iDavy does on the Olorun.
Oh my goodness, the pressure coming out onto Lode is incredible. There's just constant. Yeah. Yes, loads of pressure. Fantastic. But I think you're right there about the side camps there, with the shield buff being, just by virtue of having a little bit of extra minions there, is worth that touch more gold. But it's negligible at this stage. It's when it's consistent and constant that it really becomes a problem. But look at the gold lead already for the Olympus Bolts. Like, it's seemingly been left lane where all the pressure is, and a lot of pressure in mid lane too, but Bolts are up like 800 gold. Where is that coming from?
That would be the solo lane matchup, which we haven't talked about yet, but this is another kind of 1-2 punch over there in the solo lane, where people have been playing Wukong for quite a while now, and it was a top ban for a while just because of how effectively it clears the wave, rotates the map, invades all of the farm, and people have pretty much decided that, you know, what clears the wave and rotates better than a Wukong, Judas? Well, it's gonna be Hades. This guy is pretty much the absolute best pre-level 5 wave clear that you can get, unless you're gonna pick something like, I don't know, Izanami or something that's just gonna clear the wave with auto attacks. It just outright out pressures the Wukong and shoves all of the wave into tower. And if you're denying an entire wave to a solo laner's tower, that's a whole lot of gold you're leaving on the table for that solo laner. And I think that if you take a look at the net worth charts here, you can see that it is about 300 gold down for 300 gold down for Panvich. I was going to say it was the other way around, but had it read the first time, should have trusted my gut. The Wukong doesn't get to play this lane really until he starts getting some of these items online. You can see he's going for the very aggressive Bluestone into Soul Eater. There is not a drop of defense to be found in that build, Judas, which means that is reasonably susceptible to ganks, but does at least have the ultimate to keep him safe, doesn't have to necessarily interact in the lane, can look to play pretty defensive.
GunTTeRR in some trouble, looking to get defensive themselves, but there comes the bombs coming through, but doesn't quite connect, and that will be that. GunTTeRR gets out alive, but a fantastic silence from Dutsher. However, Rapio into the bat out of hell. Bero nowhere to go. Will fall down for first blood. Now, can they find a second blood in the process? OtherTheAnother under some pressure, getting blasted down. Manages to dash on out. Rapio leaping in, gets pulled into the tower, though. But that's a fantastic Scarab's blessing. OtherTheAnother ticks down and shall fall. That is 2 kills in mid lane for the Camazotz.
Rapio is not playing by the rules in the mid lane right now, man. He just got 2 kills that one might argue, okay, we'll say the Agni kill he should have gotten, because Bero dashes in there trying to secure the kill onto GunTTeRR, who, whatever kind of shoes he's wearing, Judas, Smite needs to just sponsor that kind of shoe, because he had the best juke boots I've ever seen, dodging those Agni bombs, almost completely dodging the Typhoon from OtherTheAnother as well, and he's dead to rights, is Bero, after dashing in there. But the fact that they got the kill on the Susano in the tower after being pulled in and then knocked up in the tower is ludicrous. And that's crazy. a little taste, a little appetizer, Judas, for what this Niflheim Wargs team is going to be doing. These 2 assassins, GunTTeRR and Rapio, they're going to be wreaking havoc on whoever is in front of them from the Olympus Bolts, knowing that A, they have great safety in their own kits. Set is very good at getting in and getting out with 1 kill. Camazotz is basically the best assassin in the game.
Oh, great grab.
Grabbing a kill for himself. This Lode will have to use the ult to get on out of there. But that Khepri ult makes things so difficult.
Here's round 2, but Rapio again takes off into the sky. Gets away to safety, those trying to fly out. Another nice leap, and Bero doesn't connect with the CC. Rapio there, like you said, though, playing this Camazotz in this sort of high-octane style, diving deep, because there's the trust that Predss will bail them out as well if necessary. Now, even then, squaring on up to OtherTheAnother in the jungle, in a place where Susano doesn't want to fight yet, right? Falling down early. Susano's maybe not the best at dueling with a god like Camazotz, who just outright does more damage at this stage of the game. And Bero, that's a dash into the wall. The L shape says all. Possibly, though, Bero will get out, but there's the blink from Rapio. There's the sweep up of the kill. Now, can OtherTheAnother close the distance? Will maybe try to teleport in, but Predss being there again, the faith that Rapio has on their support. Dutsher, though, no faith to be had. There's the Scarab's blessing. GunTTeRR on scene, now trying to swing down onto this duo lane, but they can't do it. Can they have the damage? GunTTeRR solo. There's the Cyclone. The skewer comes through. There's the knockup. Other finds the kill this time. Predss looking to sweep it up. Good grab from Dutsher. They're still low. Going to chase this one away, but that will be that. A chaotic fight. Overall, pretty good shutdown for the Bolts to pick up.
Chaotic is well said there, because Rapio diving behind the tier 1 tower is a bit ambitious, and Predss was there to bail him out. And I think that GunTTeRR either overestimated the damage he's got right now, or maybe had the wrong read or didn't quite get the communication that he was looking for, because he clearly thought that that was a we turn here kind of fight, and he jumps in with the ultimate. But Rapio was already Scarab's blessinged up and was on his way out of that fight. Predss wasn't really looking to get any more aggressive, was also trying to exit, and it was really only Rapio, or excuse me, only GunTTeRR that was going in there. So 1v2 in the Ganesha ult is not the ideal location for him to be taking that fight. He took a large chunk of damage and didn't have quite the instantaneous burst damage that might have been necessary to get him out of that situation with one of those kills. If he can successfully burst down the rest of OtherTheAnother's health bar, then obviously Dutsher is not going to be as big of a problem for him with that Dharmic Pillars, but it's because he missed the damage check required to get on out of there safely is the reason that goes a little bit more poorly for the Niflheim Wargs and nets the Olympus Bolts their first kill of the game.
Yeah, it is important, of course, so that kill was onto GunTTeRR and not Rapio, because Rapio now 3-0, valuable kill if the Bolts are able to get that. But with the way that Rapio has played it so far, again, the faith in Predss to bail them out at all times. It just means that this will be a tough engagement for the Bolts pretty much all the time. Because if this Camazotz is a threat that has to be dealt with immediately, you can't then compensate for the fact that there'll be the Scarab's Blessing coming in. You will just have to commit to that coming through. But something I have to point out, as was pointed out to us by production at the start of this game, Rapio has not opted for a traditional jungle start, has actually gone for this Bluestone Pendant. What do you think of that? Is it maybe what's netted them such a good start?
I mean, it definitely makes you fight better early on. I think that the jungle starters are very good at maintaining your health bar, maintaining your mana bar when you're moving throughout the jungle, trying to clear as effectively as possible, and take these fights. And hang on, dude, he is in trouble.
There is the Pillar of Agni. Doesn't really have the damage here, though, but the Bancroft's Talon will sustain up and dish out a plenty of damage in response. So Rapio with the first failed attempt on this right-hand side. That Bluestone Pendant maybe not providing enough damage.
Yeah, going back to that, though, it is absolutely going to be better damage early for you. I think that anytime that you can get some of those yellow numbers, which Bluestone Pendant does for you very nicely, it's going to help out your early fight. It's really only in the jungle that you're going to be struggling a little bit more, because Bluestone doesn't give you additional damage to minions, which I think every other jungle starter would for you. The big thing is that late game, it becomes this is a very great poke option for me kind of item, but we might have to hold that thought. We got action solo.
The right and left lane buff invades going down for the Niflheim Wargs. Let's tune into this left-hand side as Dutsher drops the Dharmic Pillars. Maybe a little bit early, but Lodde shall secure that purple buff. So nothing doing on the left-hand side. It looks like the right-hand side as well. The Olympus Bolts able to secure that. Duduin picking up their own blue buff. But good pressure from the Wargs. You know, you always want to see teams being on the front foot and trying to go for these invades. And it looks like a Gold Fury attempt instead from the Wargs. And I don't think the Bolts are in a position to contend with this. So maybe the space created by the buff invades was all a bit of a fake for that Gold Fury.
And this is kind of the reason that teams are prioritizing this Olorun so highly, and really any other ADC, even if this guy gets banned away, that can get a whole bunch of pressure in duo lane, that's where the Gold Fury is. I mean, it's not complicated, Judas. I could explain, well, I was going to say I could explain that to my mom, but first I'd have to explain a whole lot more to her to kind of get to where that point is at. But point being, it's not a difficult concept of the early objective is on the left-hand side of the map. Using that pressure allows you to fight very effectively wherever the objective is, and therefore you get the return very early on for having that pressure. Hang on, Susano, what is this?
OtherTheAnother really wanting to push the envelope here, and Davey slams them away, trying to punish this Olorun for using that Sanctified Fields. But if you're going to force an engagement like that, you have to be absolutely certain you're going to get away with it. Looks like it was the first beacon there going the way of the Niflheim Wargs because of that. So, I mean, it's simple that Sanctified Field was down for Davey and will be for quite some time, but this Olorun's still not an easy target to pick off.
No, and I mean, not the way that engagement went at all. You're already using so many tools to even get to him, and Lodde was not within range to follow up from any of the crowd control that OtherTheAnother put down. It was a weird play, and I don't want to say desperation, because you're definitely not at that point if you're the Olympus Bolts, right? It's only 13 minutes in.
Of course.
This is only a very small gold lead or gold deficit that you're dealing with, but it's definitely a weird engagement where it felt like OtherTheAnother maybe frustrated, maybe thought that there was something there that wasn't. Whatever the case may be, it's a low percentage play that he went for there. I think that 9 times out of 10, if you're Davey there, you're probably getting out of jail for free or getting out of the engagement for free. Looks like the Wargs are contending with the idea of invading another blue buff Judas, but we'll get pinged out, we'll get rotated out by the Olympus Bolts. And they're trying to grab this stranglehold back of the solo side. They had it very early on because of the way that Hades functions. He's just outright going to out-pressure that lane, as was discussed previously. But now that you've got the Soul Eater online for Panvich, now that you've got at least a little bit of defense there as well, not as susceptible to any of those rotations over there, can clear the wave a whole lot better. Now the Wargs are going to have to find some answers of their own for what the Olympus Bolts are doing, and it looks like it's going to start with this Pyromancer.
Yeah, the Olympus Bolts right now penned back in their half of the map, and I mean, you can't win a game of Smite this way. You know, if you're pinned back so far, the objectives are in the middle, Kaizo. Similar to what you said with the Gold Fury. And not only is it on the left-hand side, it's in the very center of the map, as is the Pyromancer. And if the Niflheim Wargs have not only control of their 50% of the map, but also the next, like, 10 to 20% of the opposing side of the map, there is nothing on the side of the Bolts to really contend any of these objectives. You know, there's no long-range final judgment from Thoth, for example. BeroTheBeast with these Agni bombs is okay at contesting an objective, but you still have to put yourself within harm's way. Now, Davey has had basically freedom of the map on this left-hand side. Maybe the Bolts trying to change that, but it's just not working for them right now. Everything seems to be so telegraphed, and the Wargs seem to be 2 or 3 steps ahead every time.
And they're going to bomb this middle tower as well, taking away some of that safety from the Olympus Bolts. And I think that, I've said this before, Judas, I think that the middle tier 1 tower is an underrated objective in the game of Smite. Obviously, every tower is going to give you a small amount of gold, or actually a pretty sizable amount, now that I think about it, of global gold to distribute to your team, but the middle tower in particular opens up the map so much for you. It prevents the enemy mid laner from being safe. If you do some kind of objective and you have to retreat afterward, it doesn't give you that safe haven in the middle lane that you can fall back to. It really just prevents you from navigating the map with any sort of safety. And already things were going to be a dire strait for Bero, and in terms of positioning, finding a safe place to stand against GunTTeRR and Rapio on this double assassin combination. And now without the tower, it's going to be even more difficult, because Panvich can just walk up behind you, and that would be a tower dive if it were there, but it's gone now. So instead, he's just rotating his happy way over, and the Wargs are very much positioned around this Gold Fury.
Yeah, now it's just a dive, similar to what Rapio was doing to Lodde there. And this Gold Fury, again, look at the space between the closest member of the Olympus Bolts and this objective. It's just so difficult for them to get anywhere near to even begin to contend with these objectives. But I don't know, is this playstyle oriented from the Wargs? Are they just playing in a way that the Bolts aren't equipped to deal with? Or maybe are the Bolts just not responding correctly to this?
That's a really hard question, because definitely the Wargs drafted to be able to do that. That is why Olorun is the #1 pick in this draft. It is just outright the best ADC right now at doing this specific thing. At being very safe in the early game. You just sit in tower, or you sit in the enemy tower if they'll let you, and you farm up the map, you get control of that shield buff, and you generate as much pressure as possible for these early objectives. And then once you get to the stage where you can start pulling the objectives, Sanctified Field is an incredible tool, not only as a burn tool to actually burst down the objective itself, but also as a deterrent to prevent the enemy from stepping up and contending with you. It's just very, very good at fighting around these early Gold Furies. And the Olympus Bolts, their team is very cut and dry. This is how Smite is played. You have a mage in the mid lane, you have an assassin in the jungle, but it doesn't deal particularly well with an overwhelming amount of pressure in the duo lane.
Well, a bit of a scrap going on this right-hand side. Duduin, can they detonate the charge? No, they cannot. Rapio will escape just now, but Panvich getting pulled back in by Other. Will not be able to do any more than that. Duduin sustaining right back up, but still a large grouping on this right-hand side of the map. GunTTeRR goes in first onto Duduin, trying to really take down this Hades. They're committing a lot to it, but a fantastic pull from Other takes down GunTTeRR at this fight. Now Rapio having to leap on away. Panvich similarly shall somersault down, but Dutsher with a fantastic Dharmic Pillars slows down Rapio. Duduin again with the chase, getting their own revenge. That will be that as far as the fight is concerned, but the Wargs finally overstep, and the Bolts manage to punish them.
And Predss kind of caught with his pants down there. I think that GunTTeRR doesn't use beads or Aegis there in anticipation of a Scarab's Blessing coming his way, but Predss, obviously, his back was turned at the time that he actually goes down, doesn't get that cooldown onto him, and Panvich is surrounded by enemies, but maybe not in danger here. It's actually going to be the mid laner for the Bolts that's in danger.
Scrappy fight, double knockup, and Predss goes down. Rapio on the backside to Bero, now swooping down, but Panvich gets caught in the Pillar of Agni, and she'll fall. Now, Rapio does find that swooping kill they were looking for onto this Agni, but Lode is giving chase. Lode with a long rotation, making a long chase onto Rapio, who might try to sustain up off of this speed buff. Can't see them, though, and it looks like the bolts will give up this chase. Rapio now finally spotted back on the map. A bit of Looney Tunes going on as Rapio leaps on over the wall. It's actually going to die defeat. Yo, you could just back, bro. No, can't back there, though. Rapio does fall down. That is the shutdown gold, though, away with for Rapio. So maybe you can feel a bit more free to commit to these fights.
And for anybody at home wondering why you just saw the 4-0 jungler kill himself to a Phoenix, that is to prevent the enemy team from getting the kill on him and getting additional shutdown gold. Obviously, with some of the changes in Smite, they're trying to make it less snowball-oriented, so despite the fact that nobody actually dealt damage to Rapio to kill him there and isn't credited with the kill, they still do get the shutdown gold, but he at least denies them the additional kill bounty that would have gone onto his head in a situation where he wasn't getting out of there whatsoever. So now 4-0 goes to 4-1, which, ironically enough, Judas, is the exact slash line of the enemy jungler. The jungle is OP, man. It is literally the only role in this entire game.
All right, mid laner. All right, cool it down.
At all. Not to mention the fact that you can't even kill these guys. They're literally killing themselves because nobody else can do it.
I mean, it's just good play, if you ask me. You know, Rapio making the right choice. The choice from the Wargs is for this fight on the left-hand side, Gold Fury. It's actually an Oni Fury, as in the mid lane. That seems to be where the aggression is coming out from the Bolts, but they are unaware of the fact that this Oni Fury has been taken down. Now, it looks like the Bolts will have to back away from this mid lane aggression. And again, the Wargs just a few steps ahead.
Or the Bolts may be a few steps behind at this point, because you shouldn't be caught off guard by what the Wargs are doing. It is Davy walks at objective, Davy hits objective, objective goes to the Niflheim Wargs. And now he's run out of things to do on the left-hand side of the map, Judas. He's got the starter item now fully upgraded, Diamond Arrow available for him, a crazy amount of power and attack speed available for the Niflheim Wargs ADC. I thought that they were going to go for this Fire Giant. Looks like instead they're just going to start with this Tier 1 tower and right, but this is the beginning of things to come for the Niflheim Wargs. Davy is no longer needed in the left lane. They are exclusively going to be playing around this Fire Giant this game.
Yeah, pushing up to the guaranteed Tier 1 tower there, and possibly some pressure on this Tier 2 as well. It's going to be a tough engage for the Bolts. They don't really have that solid initiation tool. You know, there's no Thor, there's no, like, blink ult from a support. You know, we do have Dutsher landing some pretty solid Dharmic pillars, but that's not really how you want to engage a fight. You know, that's more of a counter-engage tool in this sort of context. So, right now, the onus is all with the Niflheim Wargs. You know, whatever they want to do is what will be happening next. It's all about if the Olympus Bolts can respond to that accordingly in a way that benefits them. But at the moment, the Fire Giant is surely scared of only one team, and that team's the Niflheim Wargs.
Which makes the million-dollar question, Judas, for the Olympus Bolts. What do you do in this position? You're down about 6,000 gold, 22 minutes in. Pyro due to spawn here. Beacon also due to spawn. I believe this will be the third one, which will enable those Titans to be free and walk down the lanes. What do you do if you're the Olympus Bolts? Well, your options are you can take a fight with the enemy team in the jungle, you can attempt to steal one of these objectives, or you can give up the objective and try to play around the siege defense. Those are kind of the options that they're contending with right now. And traditionally, if you're going for a steal attempt, if you're going for a fight attempt, you're looking at what is your best secure tool on the map. And, well, you're looking at maybe Typhoon, maybe Ganesha ult is going to be stealing away an objective. You don't have a mid laner like a Scylla, a Kukulkan, Eset, none of these big burst damage mages to really make sure that you are the one that will be getting the objective. All of these objectives at this point, if they're a full 5v5 fight, will basically be a coin flip. There is no single instance of damage that is significantly bigger than the enemy team's instance of damage. So the fight is a little bit scary. Giving up the objective is definitely scary because you don't want to just let the enemy team siege with that Olorun ult. You're really running dry for options here, and it probably is going to be on the Bolts to fight before the objective gets low.
Well, the Bolts in position. They are fully aware that this Fire Giant is happening. It's all about what can they do to react to it. Now, Fire Giant's only about half HP, not a full commitment here. There's the sprint. That's the gas button hit. And now Panvich in some trouble, but a fantastic Pillar of Agni puts Duduin in a great spot. And there's the Purification Beads. Davy in a huge amount of trouble. Gets the Scarab's Blessing early, but on the right-hand side, Bero has fallen. Davy might go down to Duduin. Do they have the damage? Not quite. And that will be that for the Hades. Now on the right-hand side, GunTTeRR takes down OtherTheAnother. 3 have already fallen for the Olympus Bolts. GunTTeRR now with Rapio for backup, looking at Lode. Gets the sound waves coming through, gonna dash on in, jumps onto Dutsher and takes them down. GunTTeRR with the skewer shall finish off the Olympus Bolts. That is a full tier side as the Titans meet in the middle, and the Niflheim Wargs shall be getting the Fire Giant.
Niflheim Wargs have their option of the map right now, Judas. Could be Fire Giant, and with about 200 HP on GunTTeRR, you don't need any HP on GunTTeRR to just walk into this right Phoenix alongside Rapio and grab that one away. And I want to talk about that fight because it was a fantastic effort from the Olympus Bolts, despite the fact that they end up getting 5-0'd, but it was actually 5-1. Panvich does have to fall for that fight to go the way of the Niflheim Wargs, at least as convincingly. Duduin, did a fantastic job that fight of doing the solo lane thing. Oftentimes, people think that the solo laner's job is just to outright kill the enemy team, kill their backliners, and sometimes that is your job. But sometimes your job is what we saw Duduin do there. He has to prevent Davy from getting into that fight and hitting his backline, hitting his support, and make sure that somebody else's attention is on him at all times. He keeps Davy there, he keeps Predss there, he gets both Relics and Olorun ult and Ganesha ult all on top of his head, and still, somehow, by some stretch of the imagination, almost manages to land the kill onto Davy, which could have been disastrous for the Niflheim Wargs. And despite that fact, they still managed to keep him alive. And unfortunately, everybody else's attention is trying to keep Bero alive, trying to keep the back line of the Olympus Bolts from the overwhelming pressure that is the Niflheim Wargs. Once you have 3 different characters diving your backline in Rapio, GunTTeRR, and Panvich, your job is incredibly difficult as Dutsher on this Ganesh. Things are not going to be easy for you, and that fight is a great example of that, where your solo laner can do exactly his job, and even if OtherTheAnother is back there trying to help peel for you, you're still contending with an incredible amount of pressure from the Niflheim Wargs. It doesn't go in their favor that time for the Olympus Bolts. They did an excellent job, but things are not going to get easier for them, Judas. It's only going to get more difficult now that the Wargs have the Fire Giant.
The Wargs are barreling into these Phoenixes. Panvich actually steps up through the middle lane too, putting pressure everywhere. Now, it looks like a bit of an engagement in the mid lane. OtherTheAnother decides to teleport up, but Rapio there taking some damage, and we'll have to try to sustain up through that with their built-in sustain. Right-hand Phoenix, of course, already gone down. So now it is a case of, can they defend this left-hand side? There's the Dynamic Pillars. There's the first attempt batted away. The second attempt comes marching in. These rain fires pretty good. Duduin goes in, lots of damage onto Predss. Runic Bomb though onto this Phoenix sets it very, very low. And look at all the space being made. GunTTeRR diving through. Rapio cleans up OtherTheAnother. Panvich and GunTTeRR now jumping on in. The skewer comes out. Lots of damage being pressured out. This Titan is just going to be in danger though. But Davy in even more danger. Fantastic Scarab's Blessing again. Actually gets him out of the Pillar of Agni. Predss so low. GunTTeRR shall fall. Rapio diving deep onto Bero in the fountain and actually swoops him down. Actually goes for Lode too. But that is an Aegis amulet. Rapio not playing by the rules like you'd mentioned. Might finally get punished for it. But look at the healing coming out from this Camazotz. Will not be enough. Lode does clean that one up. But that is the Olympus Bolts losing all 3 Phoenixes. And as we saw in the previous game, it's nigh on impossible to come back from this stage.
Yeah, these are what you call the 99%ers for the Niflheim Wargs. This is a stage of the game where, Judas, it doesn't get any more difficult than this for the Olympus Bolts. And you're talking not just winning one fight convincingly for them to get back into this one. This is, you have to win 2 to 3 convincing fights back to back to back if you want to fight your way back in for the Olympus Bolts. And that's because all of these towers still standing for the Niflheim Wargs, even if you wipe all 5 members cleanly, you can't just march it down the middle lane and end the game. Still a lot of homework left to do for the Olympus Bolts. And all of these fire minion waves crashing down into the Titan, making sure you keep the pressure on these Phoenixes as they're respawning. Left Phoenix will respawn, or I guess for us, it's the right Phoenix. For the Olympus Bolts is now back up. That is the fire giant side of the map, so that is one that should at least be a little bit more simple to contend with. But, I mean, this is dire straits if you're an Olympus Bolts fan. And I don't think that this is going to be a situation where you can just sit back and let the game come to you. You're pretty much looking for the enemy team to make a mistake and being there and being ready to capitalize on it. This is usually where you'll see teams group up in the jungle, try to get one pick on a critical member, and then take an advantageous fight once they're already eliminated. But with how the Wargs are positioning here, the excellent ward coverage, they're already beginning to establish deep around the Fire Giant pit, around that speed buff for the Olympus Bolts. This is, it doesn't look good, Judas.
One thing that has just caught my eye, Davey has been playing almost entirely PvE this game. 1-0-0 as their team has killed all 3 Phoenixes and has a phenomenal gold lead. Somehow, the only kill that Davey has been a part of is when Duduin dove super deep for them. Other than that, it has all been these towers being pushed down, the Phoenixes, the Fire Giant, and I think a Solid, an Oni Fury, and a Pyromancer so far this game.
Yep.
Davey hasn't even been in these fights. These have effectively been 4v4 or 4v5 fights for the Olympus Bolts, and it's still going the way of the Niflheim Wargs. Right now, it's do or die for the Bolts.
It is do or die for them, which is why you can see them positioned around this Fire Giant and jumping in, actually, as Duduin here. This is, now we're at desperation, Judas.
Yep, this is Desperation Station, and Panvich is the conductor, diving in with GunTTeRR onto OtherTheAnother, who dashes on away. There's the Sanctified Fields. Dutsher in a world of pain. Locked in place is the Elephant, and they shall fall to Davey. Rapio onto Duduin, gets looped back. Now has to go up into the bat out of hell. Can't quite finish the kills there, but the drive forward from the right-hand side finishes off Lodde, and the Olympus Bolts staring down the barrel of a gun. The Wargs walk on in. Final Phoenix has fallen. Don't even need the Fire Giant. Well, GunTTeRR might need a bit of healing. It's going to be a tough push from here without these minions just yet. Left side Phoenix has respawned, but shall go back down. The Wargs reset. Going to look to take this fire and then finish off the game.
And the Olympus Bolts don't look done with them yet either. They still know that they're very low. Duduin stepping up here, understanding that this might be their best fight, despite the fact that they are down a couple of members, will at least flush out several people from the Niflheim Wargs.
Oh, man.
Duduin is maybe contending or flirting with the idea of contesting the Fire Giant, but it's bad in the fountain room.
Oh, my goodness. Exactly that. There is Bero being taken down. This Fire Giant going to take a little bit of time. It is just Davey providing damage, but Duduin getting chased away. Might even be a bit more than that. Has to lurk under the ground. Get back to safety. Dutsher opens the door, but doesn't want to let the bad guys in. Rapio, brawling it out with OtherTheAnother, who almost wins that fight, but Panvich tags himself in. Has already bird formed in, though. Is maybe getting a bit aggressive. There's the Somersault Cloud come through. GunTTeRR with the skewer on the backside. Starts sweeping through the enemy team. Is low, but gets revived through the Scarab's Blessing. His killing spree for GunTTeRR. Rapio still doing whatever they feel like. The Titan is already so low. GunTTeRR going all the way into the fountain. Doesn't manage to kill off Lodde. Predss dragging Dutsher out. Another kill for Lodde. Swinging away is this Heimdallr. The Titan is so low. That will be that. Lodde tries to put up a defense, but the Olympus Bolts cannot hang on. The Niflheim Wargs take this first game.
And the Niflheim Wargs do exactly what we've seen a number of teams do so far in this current meta, which is pick the Olorun, play around the Gold Fury, and call it good. I mean, you can talk about the set in the mid lane. It's spicy, at least for the time being, at least for some of the newer audiences to the competitive scene right now, maybe aren't aware of the fact that this has been kind of bubbling under the surface for a while. But the MVP of this game, despite the fact that, you know, as you mentioned, not high kill participation, not high player damage, is the iDavy Olorun. it has to be stated, it cannot be understated, how important this pick was in what the Wargs were doing. It is exclusively because he got off to that 3-level lead. He had a stranglehold on the left-hand side of the map, and they played so effectively around these early objectives that the Wargs get to that commanding position and are able to convert it seemingly effortlessly.
Well, first game goes the way of the Niflheim Wargs. What can the Bolts do to weather the storm? Let's find out as we go for a quick break, and then come back for game number 2. And welcome back, everybody, to the Olympus Bolts versus the Niflheim Wargs. The Niflheim Wargs putting on a real show for us just now. That is how you get a composition designed to get ahead early and then stay ahead early and then win the game from being ahead early. But is that the only way to play this game, Kaizo? Because the Bolts, they're going to have to bring us something different.
I don't know if it's the only way to play the game, Judas, but if you're allowed to play that way every time, I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, it's been pretty well tested at this point that that is a very effective way to play Smite right now, is dumping all of your resources into an Olorun and then just playing around the objectives for basically the entire game. I mean, there were a couple of different instances where we saw fights in solo lane around the blue buff, maybe a couple of dives in the middle lane, but for the most part, all of the action was on the dual lane side of the map, and that is not by any mistake. And I think that the Heimdallr was, it's interesting. It's definitely one that you don't just shelve immediately. You can pocket that one for later. I think that it's probably fine in the event that you're not specifically playing against the Olorun. I think that something like a Soul with a little bit higher pressure might have been one that you would want to meet that Olorun with, but just letting that guy run rampant, I mean, he got to a 3-level lead, like you said, with 11,000 player damage and 1 kill participation. There just needs to be more attention paid to that side of the map from the Bolts.
Let's see what the adjustments are as we head on in to picks and bans for this second game. But I did mention during the previous picks and bans, actually, we have seen earlier today having Ganesha and Heimdallr as your dual lane pairing. It just doesn't exude enough pressure on that left-hand side of the map. You know, you can't really punish any ADC. You know, if you're not playing Olorun or Freya, you're probably playing something like the Hachiman or the Heimdallr or Jingwei, something that is not interested in fighting and will just retreat if necessary. So I think Ganesha is definitely a really strong pickup at the moment, but if you are not getting one of these high pressure hunters to pair with it, it's maybe something you'll have to shelf until later on in the draft, at least, until you can see where it's going to go, because the way that the Wargs drafted, it was perfectly around this Ganesha. Never really saw Dutsher with any opportunity to have a huge impact, and that is absolutely not a shot at the player. Dutsher, one of my favorite supports to watch personally, but just not able to impact the map in the way you would really want that to be. And of course, the Heimdallr was the top pick, I believe. So if we're going to see something like that, we need to see a lot more. So keep an eye on what the Bolts might opt for. We're seeing very similar bans coming out. Of course, that Zhonghui off the map again. The Raijin solo being taken away from Duduin. Looks like a Thoth Harbor and a Thoth Lock. Is this the type of top pick that we needed to see from the Bolts?
I don't know if you saw, Judas. I just went like through the 5 stages of grief on my expression right there, because you've got Freya still available and you're picking Thoth overall, my man. Like, that just feels like you're asking for trouble against a team that told you very specifically, we want to play Camazotz, we want to play Set. I mean, look at this. Freya, Hades, how much did they slip under the table to let the Wargs play this top tier? I'm out of words. I can't even formulate a sentence correctly because I'm so shocked by this Thoth top pick. And that's not to say Thoth is a bad god right now. I think that Thoth is a very fine mid laner. I just don't know that he is #1 overall pick when you have something like the Freya against a team that has already shown you we want to play around iDavy playing a high pressure magical character. You specifically ban out a high pressure magical character from him to prevent him from being able to do that. And then you just give him the other one. I mean, I don't know if Lode is very comfortable in the Freya matchup with this Heimdallr, or maybe they just don't fear the Freya as much as they fear the Olorun, but this is terrifying for the Wargs. The fact that they don't even have to think. Look at how quickly they selected Freya Hades set. This literally looks to be, Judas, like the Wargs are just picking off the top of a tier list without any bans being thrown their way.
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of concerns now for the Bolts, who seem to have picked up their 3 main laners, right? So you have the Thoth in mid, the Amaterasu in solo, and the Heimdallr in duo. Those are all particularly slow lanes, actually. Thoth, not one of these gods known for getting aggressive early on, maybe something like the Raijin. So seeing what is likely to be the main lanes be slow paced, it means you really need an aggressive support and jungle combination, and even then, that's probably not going to be enough. We see the Camazotz and the Khepri taken off the board on one side. I see Thor locked in for the Wargs, who now, almost certainly going back to that set in the middle lane. And Thor combos so well with it. I've got big fear right now for the Bolts' draft.
Yeah, the Bolts are going to have a lot of questions to answer with these bottom 2 picks. And
there's another
one.
It's
going to be, how do you generate a bit of pressure in a composition where, like you mentioned, oh my god, this is just insane what they're doing here, frankly, Judas. Like, I'm going through the 5 stages again, man. I don't understand the basis behind these picks whatsoever.
10th stage of grief coming out right here.
Let's break it down, because I really should be more specific about what my problems are, or at least what my concerns are for what the Bolts have drafted here. They've already shown for the Wargs that they have overwhelming pressure in the middle lane, in particular when it comes to diving mages. That's what Set does very well. That's what Thor does very well, is they both penetrate the back line very effectively without having to contend with the front line to get there. And Thoth is a character that traditionally needs to stand very far away in a very safe area with a lot of gods around him in order to feel like he can really do much of anything. He doesn't have the greatest safety tool. He has a dash that goes decently far, but after that, he is a sitting duck. And you would traditionally think that the way that you want to supplement that would be a large front line to prevent the enemy from getting to you, make them use a lot of resources to get to the Thoth to begin with. But Aphrodite does not do that. Aphrodite is also a very late game pick that doesn't really do a whole lot in the early game, and is in fact very susceptible to pressure in the early game against something like this Freya. I feel like she's going to get eaten alive, man. The Bolts have an excellent, a fantastic, a stupendous, Judas, late game draft here. If they can get there, I just don't know that the Wargs are going to let you get there.
The one saving grace for the Bolts is that this is EU. We might just go to late game sometimes. It does sometimes happen that way. But let's see if we will get to late game as we head on in to game number 2 between the Olympus Bolts and the Niflheim Wargs. And at least, Kaizo, not with somewhat spicy picks of the Bakasura and the Aphrodite, at least it's not something crazy like an Aphrodite in the jungle. I was getting a little bit concerned at this point, because not that it doesn't make sense from a standard draft point of view, but you almost feel like if you're going to mix it up this much, it's probably not enough of a mix-up to actually throw the Niflheim Wargs off. You probably needed some more real extreme change-up to really surprise and somewhat set the Wargs back, but the Wargs have been playing so confidently. I'm not sure there's anything that could surprise them at this point. So all eyes are going to have to be on anything that OtherTheAnother can do, because Bakasura are good at farming, and yeah, dual lane as well. If we can see some impact from the duo and the jungle, but Dutch is actually getting locked in. Look at the body blocks coming in. I don't want to get excited for this. This is almost sad to watch, because Dutsher has absolutely nothing they can do about it. There is the first green buff of the game gone from the Olympus Bolts and a first blood for the Niflheim Wargs.
And this is... Look, man, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching the end here already. 50 seconds into
just
the game,
F6 it, bro.
But it's rough if you're the Olympus Bolts, because the entirety of the Niflheim Wargs game plan for game number 1, and obviously based on how they drafted here in game number 2, is we want iDavy on a magical ADC that has high pressure to do whatever he wants on the left-hand side of the map. And giving him this first blood, which notably did go to him instead of Predss, which is the optimal way for that to go, and putting behind the dual lane of the Olympus Bolts, in particular, this very slow, very late game Aphrodite. Now they can zone the wave for the most part. They can look to pressure load here with an incredible amount of damage, Judas. This is tough to watch.
It is genuinely hard to watch. I'm frightened for what Davy and Predss will become, playing This aggressive style support as well in the Horus, it just punishes the Aphrodite so well. You know, Lode already no purification beads from that first engagement just means there is nothing you can do, because Heimdallr, one of the more like immobile hunters, still level 1 2 minutes into the game. It really doesn't get much worse than this.
It does not. And you know, traditionally, Judas, the thing that I'm about to say is something that a chair 2 will say 20 to 30 minutes from now. But I think that we're at the point where I need to address this right now. If you're the Niflheim Wargs, how do you fix the mess that you've created here? And that can be one of two things. Well, hang on. We might have a solo lane invade over here. Panvich is looking for trouble, and Duduin is not very healthy for this buff invade.
Yeah, not particularly healthy. There's a good silence come through, and there's the souls expunged. OtherTheAnother taking a big brunt of damage. Duduin dash gets blocked. There's a fantastic wall. Almost locks him in place, but not quite. It's just the blue buff invade. And yeah, it's a real mess that the Bolts have found themselves in already. And look at Predss. Predss just all alone, 1v2, wants to steal away this purple.
And he's abducted it. The Bolts pulled it first, which means that the Wargs can grab it and take it wherever in the hell they need to. And that's apparently going to be the shield buff. So another buff taken away here from Lode. And back to the question of, if you're the Niflheim Wargs, you're already 2,000 gold down at 3 minutes into the game, Judas. What do you do to get yourself back into this game? And you have two options, really, to get yourself back in. You can, A, rotate over somebody to come help you in the left lane and try to shut down this Freya as quickly as possible. If she gets a hasten ring online, if you have Predss rotating early on and leaving that to be an ADC 1v1, there is nothing at all that Lode can do based on the character he's playing and based on the character Davy's playing to catch up in the 1v1. It is just not the way that Smite is played. It's just not the way the lane matchup goes. So somebody needs to come help him. If that's Bero rotating over for one of these shield buff invades, if this is trying to catch Davy off guard with some good ward coverage and then rotating over the OtherTheAnother, forcing the Freya ult and preventing her from freezing these waves on tower line, you can potentially look to do one of those two things to get yourself back into this game. But more often than not, in the face of overwhelming pressure, in the face of a giant level lead to the tune of twice the level of load for Davy right now, most teams will elect to put their pressure elsewhere. The most likely thing that you could do here for the Wargs to get back into this, or excuse me, for the Bolts to get back into this game, is to try to play around the mid lane or try to play around the solo lane. Invade these buffs for this Hades, take the blue buff away from him, which is very critical early on before he gets anything to sustain his mana, or try to make sure that you can get Bero comfortable. But whatever you do, you cannot just sit on your hands at this point.
Predss has just used To the Sky to teleport the large frontline minions of his own wave into the tower of the Olympus Bolts. That is absolutely sick. And Lode is just being stripped of everything. It's nigh on criminal at this point. Just seeing the punishment, because a lot of the comeback mechanics in the game are based around gold differential, right? We see the chests on the back left-hand side will be in favor of the Bolts. You know, that's how you get a bit of gold back, but it doesn't give you that much experience. In fact, the chests themselves actually give you none. So still not level 5 either for Dutsher or Lode. Just means that Lode is in even more danger. You know, will not have the Through the Realms just to escape. Finally gets that level 5 ticked over, as does Dutsher, and might now rotate to mid lane. But this is a clinical way to show how the Niflheim Wargs are playing this dual lane. This is exactly what you do with this sort of lead.
And the Wargs don't even have to do anything fancy at this point, Judas. If they can stalemate two of their other lanes and then just let Predss and Davy sit over here and make Lode's life a living hell, their game plan is already done. I mean, that's basically what they wanted to do last game, and they settled for not having Davy fight at all and then only hitting these objectives. I mean, this is literally game one part 2 electric boogaloo, but things are going even better for you if you're a Wargs fan. And now GunTTeRR under a bit of pressure here. OtherTheAnother is on the scenery, but teleport out will mean that he'll get away safely. And Predss is doing some nasty things to Lode.
Again, might not have to dash onto safety, but with a bit of sustain and a fair bit of tankiness for this Horus just means that they're not really going to get punished for a deep dive such as that. And I think this also helps from the side of the Wargs that there is OtherTheAnother on this Bakasura who really doesn't have enough lockdown to secure a kill against this high-pressure duo lane, because, you know, if OtherTheAnother wants to gank this Freya, Freya's just going to take off into the sky. Finally, some pressure on this right-hand side of the map we're seeing. Dutsher is here. Actually, a 4-man rotation. Panvich has to be aware this is happening. Kiss off the mark. Panvich just dashes into tower and says that's a big win for the Niflheim Wargs. Bolts not managing to find what they're looking for there.
But they're doing something, Judas, and that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, where you don't play around the losing lane, is kind of the succinct way to say it. You have to play around wherever you're strongest, and that might be middle lane, at least right now. GunTTeRR jumps out here, OtherTheAnother still wants this one, will actually blink an ult.
Oh, there is the... oh my god, look at the wall. Comes out from Rapio, blocks it perfectly. GunTTeRR not hit by the final judgment. Bero just avoiding that Anvil of Dawn. So that will be that as far as the quote-unquote team fight is concerned. But, you know, finally some pressure exuded by the Bolts. But, I mean, look, it's just not helping out Lodde. Lodde is sitting here wondering what else they can do with their day. At this point, like, I mean, if Lodde, let's say, for example, Lodde is some kind of IT technician and has some servers to work on in the background, you could just do that right now, you know? Like, well, what are you gonna do about this? You can't impact the map other than clearing away this purple buff on respawn. So, I don't know, man. This is such a tough situation to be in, but we have to see more from the Bolts elsewhere on the map.
Yeah, Lodde's just going to be, like, training his fishing skill or maybe killing some mud crabs or something, or whatever it is that he can do at this time to actually do something marginally productive, because otherwise it's going to be a lot of this. And Panvich,
oh dear,
that kill is very bad for the Olympus Bolts, because, again, let's circle back here, Judas. The way that the Olympus Bolts get back into this game is by playing around one of their even or winning lanes. And now, with that kill onto Duduin for Panvich, that takes away one of those two even or winning lanes. Now Panvich is ahead on a pressure pick against a late game pick. In the solo lane, you have the same situation in the left lane now, which leaves Bero in the middle lane as really the only place you can play around. I mean, the Bolts tried to go for that cheeky gank onto Panvich in right lane. Obviously, he spotted that one out, and they didn't cash out on that. They tried to catch GunTTeRR jumping out. They blinked Bakasura ulted him, but Rapio was there with the perfect wall.
Bro,
I mean, the Bolts
that's your teammate. Others dragged the camp away from Lodde. I swear everyone's just starving this poor guy farm here. Equal in level right now. Sorry, that guy's, as you were saying, it's not looking good on any of the lanes in the map right now. And like even worse in the mid lane, Bero, there's your win condition. Off the table to GunTTeRR, who does manage to sleep off the kill for OtherTheAnother, but there is the damage coming up from Rapio. Do they have the Mjolnir's attunement? Almost! Ooh. Can't find the last shot. OtherTheAnother will survive for a moment. Oh, but is it just a moment? Has to expend the blink. And finally, a minor
shield
victory
buff,
for the Bolts.
Shield buff! Shield buff! Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that we were going to start a chant for that, because this is exciting stuff if you're Lodde. This is the first time that he has seen this buff so far this game, and he's the one to take it away. That is fantastic stuff for the Olympus Bolts ADC, and it's a shame that he gets whooped there, has to teleport away from the Freya in left lane, but this is the first time that Lodde has actually done anything other than a purple buff so far, and the Wargs are really just playing with their lead at this point. They don't have to do anything fancy again until really they get comfortable enough for a Gold Fury. If you can get a pick onto Bero, you can continue to punish Dutsher for, I guess, just existing as an Aphrodite at this point in the game. Then that opens up your macro objectives. Then you can start playing around this Gold Fury. But for the time being, they seem content to just continue to try for these buff invades and maybe go for the fight here.
Sold it away, and now Lode in some trouble. Has to use the Through the Realms to get on out. Dutsher finding all these shots coming through from Davy, firing away. Goes to the sky into the Valkyrie's discretion. Not enough lockdown, though. Predss might be overcommitting here. Can they find the last amount of damage? No, they cannot. Lode might get a kill. Yes! It goes the way for Lode. Somehow, Lode has just absolutely massively increased in some gold. I just got so excited for the poor guy, man. It's been one of those games for him. Finally, Heimdallr finds himself on the board.
And kills a support that was a higher level, is still a higher level than him, Judas. So that's fantastic stuff for Lode. And this is, you know, I didn't mention this option because it really doesn't happen often at this level of play, but the other possibility to get back into the game for the Bolts is wait for the Wargs to make a mistake. And I think that diving the tier 1 tower against an Aphrodite Heimdallr, which is one of the safest backlines you can really think of for at least trying to live specifically in a tower dive situation, is probably not a bad look for you. Predss was worth a decent amount of gold, and now they're going to try to get him again.
Not quite there. There was the final judgment, which was on the mark from Bero. And Predss, oh my goodness, the dunk from Rapio just immediately spells the retreat for the Olympus Bolts. They might have been able to get that beacon, but instead now GunTTeRR low HP. OtherTheAnother swinging. Duduin loops in. Can they dive for this? They're going to try. Predss tries to get them out with a drop ship and doesn't manage to fall down in the process. OtherTheAnother now is deep. GunTTeRR trying to brawl out. Rapio shall finish them off. Predss on the backside. Duduin shall sweep that kill up. It's support for jungler, though. It's not what you want to be seeing. And Panvich is here. Bero's in some trouble. Beads and the Aegis used by the Thoth. There's Dutsher now caught in that pillar of Agni. It shall be another kill for Rapio. Another fight goes the way of the Wargs.
Oh, and I just looked at the map, Judas, and I was going to be so happy if Lode was just sitting in dual lane farming up a storm, and he will at least grab this green buff, but that's really... Hey, can Davy do this? He is getting very low here.
Whoa! Okay.
Davy takes the first spill of the game to an NPC just to add insult to injury for the enemy ADC. Lode can't bring him down. I mean, this... Wait a second. That's the second NPC to get a kill on a Niflheim Warg so far this set, Judas.
That's true. That's true. I mean... Look, the first one was maybe more intentional, and let's be perfectly clear, as much as it would be nice for Davy to have survived that, they still get a Pyromancer for really not a lot committed, so it's fine when you're in this sort of lead, and actually the tier 1 tower will go down by virtue of that runic bomb, so technically, Kaizo, Davy just traded his life for a Pyromancer and a tier 1 tower. That's something you generally would be quite happy to do. So I can't imagine the Wargs are too upset by that.
Yeah, I would love to see net worth, though, for actually determining how big the gap is between these two ADCs. A good hammer and a wall there from Rapio off the mark. Dutsher will get caught in the CC chain from Predss, but should be okay, and actually has backup here to do it. OtherTheAnother are in.
They're going on to Rapio, trying to take down this Thor, but a fantastic teleport with the Mjolnir's attunement. And that is that. All three of the ultimates that were expended there onto Rapio found absolutely nothing for it. And now the Wargs have a lot more freedom again. They can go right to this gold Fury, and there is not a whole lot that the Bolts are going to be able to do about it. No final judgment to steal. Through the Realms is providing nothing for you in terms of an objective secure, and this will be another big objective for the Wargs. Actually now can extend this gold lead. All of the lead so far has been inexperienced, but finally now getting a sizable gold lead.
And this is, I think, a pretty good example of how tricky competitive Smite can be at this level of play, Judas, because the Olympus Bolts have done a lot right so far this game, and they're actually potentially in danger here. Lode going to successfully get away. A long teleport will keep him safe, but the Bolts have done a lot correct so far this game. They got very far behind and left, tried to play around right, tried to play around mid, made aggressive rotations, and are now, Judas, making an aggressive pull on this Fire Giant. No ward coverage, but I think Rapio does know.
Rapio does know Panvich coming in, as is GunTTeRR. This would be a huge secure. This would be massive for Lode. If no one else, Fire Giant's low, and the Wargs steal it away. That is that for the Bolts. Now getting run down in the center. OtherTheAnother trying to fight back against GunTTeRR, but cannot. Dutsher shall fall as well. They did all the hard work for the Wargs, and the Wargs say, thank you very much. I will take that objective. And it was actually the one ward, if you see it on the right-hand side of the map, the one singular ward placed by the red buff that we saw both Bero and Dutsher cross over, and that gave all the information the Wargs needed. It was a Hail Mary play and did not work out.
Did not work out, but even after it doesn't work out, Judas, I still want to be very clear. That is the correct play for the Bolts to be making right now, and actually Duduin potentially under danger here will have to back up. But you're in a position where you are throwing the Hail Mary right now. If you're the Olympus Bolts, things are not looking good for you. You need to take low percentage, high payoff plays to get yourself out of here, which is why Predss will back up and not give them that opportunity. I mean, Fire Giant, unlikely to be gotten there if they actually knew that the contest was coming from the Wargs. I think that obviously Bero has the best instantaneous secure on the map, but you're looking at a situation where you're very low already. You're already pretty behind when you're trying to pull that Fire Giant. It is a low percentage, high payoff play, as Dutsher will absolutely be murdered here by the combination of iDavy and GunTTeRR, and Lode will have to ult out as well, but will actually be safe. They do the right thing, Judas. They try to take their one opportunity. They're way back in this game. They identified to be, does the enemy team know that we're on Fire Giant? And they tried to sneak it away. It is the correct call. It doesn't pay off for them. They've done several different things correctly so far this game and not gotten a payoff for it. But that's just how good the level of competition is here. These teams don't give you these avenues back into the game that you might find in casuals and ranked or even in your own amateur leagues at home. I mean, these guys have a stranglehold on this map, leaving nothing to chance for the Niflheim Wargs. It's very impressive to watch the Chaos team play. It's a little sad to watch the Order team go down in this way after how well they've played the macro so far, but I mean, at the end of the day, it is the Niflheim Wargs that still have this 12 to 13,000 gold lead at 18 minutes.
Yeah, the Wargs, they're almost poker player style. And what do I lose to here? And the answer was Fire Giant steal, and GunTTeRR just diving through, takes down OtherTheAnother. Rapio's actually up in the sky at speeds and ages, and the Undying Love from Dutsher. Rapio relatively low health, but oh my goodness, gets the Mjolnir's attunement. GunTTeRR takes down Lodde. This could just be the game if the Olympus Bolts aren't careful. Another kill for Panvich this time. Duduin on the retreat. Can they close the distance? GunTTeRR shall fall down to the Phoenix. That is 3 kills this set for NPCs. The Olympus Bolts have only got 3 kills in this game. At the moment, they've got a lot of deaths from these NPCs, but it's all just been... hold on, a switch up to the left-hand side. Phoenix Duduin drawn in. Has to go and dash on out. OtherTheAnother trying to fight back with the Regurgitate, which will not be enough. Dies yet again. The Wargs might go for the end here.
They could try it, but will instead elect to play it safe there. And Horus is one of my favorite characters, man. Being able to move lane minions into a different lane to open up that siege in the left lane and grab that second Phoenix is by no stretch of the imagination necessary when you're up 15,000 gold at 19 minutes and already had a Phoenix down, but certainly flashy and certainly pretty interesting to look at. As iDavy, he's going to step up here, Judas, and they could potentially kill him if they knew he was here. Looks like they're going to let him get away with the potential engage there unscathed. And the Wargs are in, I said 99% last game, Judas. This is like 99.9% position because last time, at least, we are at a stage of the game where characters were ticking over to level 20, had relics available, had a mid laner, had a jungler. No longer have a jungler for the Olympus Bolts. That guy, I mean, he just tried to clear a wave, and he just got punished for clearing the wave. That's where the Wargs are at right now, is things that are relatively innocuous and pretty benign ordinarily are very dangerous for you here if you're an Olympus Bolts fan, and they'll actually potentially get another one here. A good wall will potentially spell the end for Lodde as GunTTeRR goes in.
GunTTRR's trying to go deep for this, but will not be able to go any further. Lodde somewhat smelled that one out and actually didn't get hit by the stun, but still, look at all this pressure that the Wargs are putting out. The Fire Giant's actually respawning. This could be the mistake that the Bolts are hoping for, but the lead is so great for the Wargs. Look at Lode's HP bar just disappear. Blasted down is GunTTeRR, who is low, but the right side Phoenix already fallen. Duduin now trying to brawl. OtherTheAnother trying to fight against Panvich, who is still full health. Duduin now caught in a very tough spot. There's a wall to seal them off. Manages to get back to Phoenix, to the Fountain, but all the Phoenixes have fallen. It will now be the Wargs backing up, taking this free Fire Giant. Look at all the minions that are pushing in. This is the 99.9999% right now, because it is. Oh my goodness, what is Rapio doing? Rapio, more than confident, goes for that one. Not really going to find anything.
The answer to that question, Judas, Rapio is doing whatever he wants to at this stage of the game. He'll get a good wall there onto OtherTheAnother, who jumps in aggressively, and will try to take the 1v1 here, and Rapio puts him down in short order like a diseased dog with a... I shouldn't finish that metaphor, but Fire Giant will go to the Wargs here, as will the Pyromancer, and the second time now that they'll be getting this one, but at least the Wargs had to work for it this time. They just stole away the previous one, but we've been talking 2 or 3 times so far this game, Judas, about the Wargs could go for the end here. Make no mistake, the Wargs could go for the end here.
Well, they could go for it. They're going to start the process of going for it, and Duduin seems to be the first target. Will dash on away. Do they have the Dazzling Offensive for safety? They do, but shall not use it. Now, there's another good stun from Rapio, putting a lot of damage onto Dutsher, who is just not very tanky, as the health of a slightly tanky mid laner at this point. OtherTheAnother walks in and loses 50% of their HP bar just for existing. Dutsher, the same thing to happen. Now Panvich jumps through. Bero gets a good shot there with the final judgment, but the first wave of minions is in. Davies up into the sky, sending back the enemy team. Now the mid lane Phoenix has respawned, but there is OtherTheAnother, gets caught finally. First kill of this engagement for the Wargs. Looking for more. They're looking to finish off the end. Where shall be the coup de grace? Walking forward, there's Predss getting the lift onto Duduin. Duduin tries to turn the fight around. Mid lane Phoenix has gone down. All 5 Wargs now pushing in to this Titan. Actually going in with across the skies coming through. That's a fantastic ultimate from Panvich, pulling people out of the fountain. Lode has nowhere to go. Going for these last few kills are the Wargs, just to rub salt in the wounds. And these are some very, very big wounds. Rapio goes in. Aegis Hamlet on the fountain. Titan shall go down. The Wargs, absolute domination in game number 2. The Bolts did not know what hit them.
They didn't, man, and I wanted to be wrong, Judas. I really did want to be wrong about the draft that the Bolts cooked up, because it's an interesting one for sure. Like, if we got to 25-30 minutes of the game when it was pretty even, I think that it would have been a pretty interesting game to watch. There's a lot of nuance to the way that the mid laner would have had to position. Bero had a lot to contend with, but the Aphrodite might have been enough to keep him alive, and they could have poked from range. But when you get caught early on like that, when you just get your initial purple buff invaded, get first blooded, and a late game support gets put behind a late game and early game ADC gets put ahead, it's just so difficult to fight back from that situation. And you know, I want to be very clear, Judas, for anybody watching the post-game recap. The Bolts, again, did a lot correct that game. They took a very initial early on spill. They made a mistake, and they did almost everything that they could to claw their way back into that one. It was just the Wargs did such a phenomenal job of hanging on to their lead and making sure that they shored up any weakness in their draft, any weakness in the gameplay. They left no opportunity for the Bolts to get back in. So credit where credit is due to both teams. They both did absolutely everything that they could have, but the Wargs just came out on top this time.
No window available for the Bolts to climb on through and get back into the game. So that will be that. Both sets this morning shall end 2-0, and that will be it for the EU SCC for this morning. We'll, of course, be back with the NA SCC after the SPL, which is coming up next. But I have been Judas Priestley, joined for this cast by Kaizo. And of course, on the backside, we've had Phoenix and Raptor hooking us up with the production. Do not go anywhere. We have some major action coming through for the SPL today. We'll see you guys another time.